Bryan+Post.
And we're going to talk to you about the Post+Institute, share with you some information about our history and our philosophy. So, Brian, gosh, we've been at this since the year 2000. Feels like a long time.
It has
It
been.
has been. Tell me about whatever got you started in the concept of the stress model and love-based parenting.
Well, had been in the field for several years and had been traveling and doing some studying with some leaders, some thought leaders in the mental health field. And as I got more into the study of attachment at the time, reactive attachment disorder was a very common concept, and a lot of the children I happened to be focusing on working with, a lot of the parents that were reaching out to us, a lot of the therapists that were interested at that time were all focused around reactive attachment disorder. And that happened to be also connected to adopted children and foster children. And so, having been adopted myself, it was a kind of a natural fit. And the leader of the time that I was studying and being mentored by was taking an approach that was different from what the traditional, if you will, reactive attachment disorder therapists were taking. And it was a more family-oriented approach. And so I started doing that for several years. But then I just started to find that there were gaps, and there were parts of it that I didn't feel really met the full equation to helping families to heal and to get better. And so I started to question what I was learning and to just look deeper, just thinking about it in relationship and in the context of my own personal life experience, the experience of my sibling growing up in the home, the challenges that we had. And I really started to ask myself, attachment is a really, and this is the question I asked. Attachment is a great concept, but what is it that makes attachment possible? Because you hear about this great experience that happens between a mother and a child at birth, and the attachment process is the behavior of the child to the parent, and the bonding process, the behavior of the parent to the child. But what is it that makes that possible? And I needed that question to be answered. I needed that question to line up for some reason, to make sense, to help me make sense of the clinical work that I was doing. And really, over about a 3-year period of time, one morning the answer to the question it popped in my head, and it was stress. As long as you're stressed, you can't develop attachment. As long as you are in a state of stress, a parent can't bond with their child. And if you are working with a child, or you're working with a family, and what you're doing is ultimately creating more stress, you cannot help them really create secure attachment. It's almost a paradox. And that time in my career, and that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of the treatments towards children, a lot of the things that parents were being exposed to were actually creating more stress under the context and the auspices of creating attachment. And it just did not work. And the horror stories, literally the horror stories that I would hear and experience in watching families struggle with these children, go to these therapists, and still these kids would not really get any better. And it's because everything that they were doing, and sadly enough, the majority of what we continue to do with children to this day are practices which ultimately create more stress. So children don't get better, they get older. And so we don't realize it because it's so traditional, it's so common. So that really just compelled me to start looking at things differently. I always say that until you can see something in yourself, you can't see it in someone else. So really trying to understand my own stress, my own fear, kind of the way I view the world, kind of the way I viewed the world as a child, the way my parents viewed my sister and I as children, and then to start just looking at that clinically. And I remember working with a family. This young man was 16 years old. He was adopted from Russia, and I was in the midst of this work, and I was kind of on the precipices of doing something different in my work, but I wasn't really quite sure what that was. And I was in the middle of working with this family, and in that moment I realized that my toes were curled up, my legs were kind of pulled up, and I just caught my body, and I said right in that moment, I'm stressed right now. and I'm stressed, I know they're stressed. And I had the dad just stop. We just stopped this session because I knew I was going down the wrong path. It wasn't the path that I knew was ultimately going to help this family. And so I had a lot of experiences like that. And the Post-Institute and our educational materials have just, evolved through that process. And really an amazing thing for the Post-Institute is that all of our educational materials really began right on the cusp of this new learning that I was having. Because prior to that, and I had written a book that was just mired in fear because it's what I was learning, it's the training I was receiving, and that book never got published. And it actually became reworked and was my first book, For All Things a Season, which really started kind of laying down my thinking about the difference between love and fear in relationship and in parenting. But even with For All Things a Season, I don't think I'd quite stepped fully into the love-fear dichotomy. And so all of our educational materials with the Post-Institute really kind of span that thought. And if you go all the way back from the very beginning with Up Close and Personal, which I don't even think we have in print. Do we have some of this stuff? Those thoughts, the initial thinking, all started there. So we just, continued to work and challenge ourselves and challenge myself and read and research and study and experience after experience. I mean, that's what led us to really creating group homes in Virginia, is just to put the work to the test, and not to just put it to the test with average foster care children or average traumatized children, but to put it to the test with the most hardened and what most people in the state, the workers, consider to be the worst children in the state. Many of them have been sent out of state. And so to then not only do that, but to train parents, to really intensively train them, train staff. And we were able to do that. We were able to take the stress model and apply it and utilize it and show people that it really could be effective and make a difference in a very short period of time. And I think that's what we really want for parents today, is to realize that you've probably just stumbled across this website, and Christy and I, and you don't realize what you found. And what you found is the answer you've been looking for. You just don't know it yet. But if you'll give this educational material an opportunity and just read it, I always say, you don't have to come in, try it on, see how it fits. You don't have to buy it. Just see how it fits. And if it fits, if it feels good, then buy it and take it home. But if it doesn't, keep looking. You'll come back at another time, because where we're at with this material and all the experience that goes into it, it is transformative, and it'll make a difference. It'll make a difference in your life today if you give it a chance.
Well, one of the things that I appreciate the most about the Post-Institute is the mission of, as you said, making this information that in the past would have been, private conversations with therapists or professionals having this idea that, well, this is something only professionals know. And the fact that you've taken information from the field of neuroscience, from biology, from child development, from family dynamics, from spirituality, from nutrition, and just wrapped it all around this way that's so easy to understand and helpful, useful, and just shared it so generously with parents, because knowing that healing happens in our day-to-day relationships. The parent-child relationship has so much more influence. I mean, parents know their children better than any therapist ever could, or, they really should, and the fact that you've been so generous and so parent-driven, I think is one of the things that I appreciate most about the work of the Post-Institute. I mean, your commitment. It's been over 17 years that you've committed to continuing to support families, to teach and train via lecture with professionals, to just continue to help people understand what it means to be in relationship with their children, especially when their children are struggling. Those times that we're most prone to close ourselves off and to maybe send our kids away is the time when you're like, no, let's be in relationship. We can get through this. When we really understand our own stresses and stay in relationship, amazing things can happen.
Absolutely. And I think a couple of really important things that you said there are that, number one, I do feel like parents are the most powerful healing force in the life of their child. And at the same time, I would say that one of the sacred cows of mental health is that the therapist is the all-knowing, wise figure who guides someone and gives them this guidance into their life to help them reveal these things about themselves. But at the same time, there's this disempowering process that happens in family therapy and work with children where the parents are left kind of feeling that they don't quite measure up. They're left kind of feeling like it's the therapist who has the knowledge and the therapist who has the expertise and the therapist who knows these things about my child that I don't know. And I just don't believe those things are true. I believe that as parents, you have all the answers. You already have all the answers. We're all completely equipped. It is just a matter of lowering our fear and our stress to trust the answers that reveal themselves. And I think that is consistent in every situation. There's nothing that you're not already equipped with. And that's why I'm not real big on tools and techniques. Tools and techniques for me are limiting in and of themselves. I mean, they really give us the false illusion that we can rely on doing this one thing in this one situation, and that this one thing is going to happen and be relevant for these other situations. And it's limiting, because you and I and you as the parent, you are the tool. Your presence, your vibration is what creates the environment that's going to allow your child to work through what they need to work through so healing can be made possible.
The other thing that I really appreciate about the Post+Institute is you've taken this amazing information and you've made it available to parents. You've made it available in books, DVDs. I mean, you've just got such a vast library. I mean, just, even if somebody signs up for our network and starts receiving our emails, they're going to get just so many nuggets of information. It's amazing. Plus our Facebook and our Twitter. There's all kinds of ways that people can reach out and be connected. And in everything that we do, we're always sharing information. You won't come across us just saying, nope, you need to buy this. No, So I know that it's such a big part of what we do is making sure that this information that's so powerful is also accessible, making it cost effective, making it available in so many different formats. You can find us on YouTube. It's just, the bigger mission is about creating healing and about sharing this knowledge. We're so driven by that and feel so passionate about the impact that it can have about making those transformations from a place of feeling so worried and overwhelmed and fearful for your child's future to being able to see that it's a big world and that it's all going to work out. There's a place for them, and that there's always hope. There's always hope. Thanks for being a part of this.